Welcome to the Deep Dive. We take complex legal documents, public records, basically huge piles of information, and we boil it down so you know what's really going on.
That's the plan.
And today, we're definitely diving deep. We're looking at something that, on the surface, might seem like just online arguments, but the sources paint a very different picture, a really serious legal situation.
Absolutely. Yeah, our focus is squarely on the details in the factual allegations, civil conspiracy source materials. It's a lot. It outlines this alleged coordinated campaign with Jedidiah Brown, JB, and, well, a whole list of co-defendants.
Okay, so here's our mission for you listening. First, we need to cut through all the noise and really understand the main legal charge here, which is a civil conspiracy. What does that actually mean? And second, we're going to unpack how this massive amount of evidence, a lot of it apparently self-incriminating according to the sources, and this alleged coordination puts JB in what looks like a very tight legal spot, maybe one of the trickiest we've seen stemming from online stuff.
And, you know, the key thing to get right off the bat is that this isn't just presented as some personal fight that spiraled. The evidence laid out suggests a planned, organized effort, really, for a specific financial reason. We're talking allegations, serious ones like fraud, extortion, running an illegal business, even physical threats. And it's all allegedly coordinated by this team.
Wow. Okay. The sources are dense, so yeah, we really need to dig in to see the full picture.
Let's start there with the big one. Civil conspiracy. It sounds serious, and it is, but legally, what does a plaintiff actually have to show the court to make that kind of charge stick?
Yeah, what's the bar?
Well, legally, a civil conspiracy happens when you can prove there's, like, a combination of two or more people. And they have to agree either to do something unlawful or maybe something lawful but using unlawful methods.
Okay.
But the absolute key, the thing it all hinges on, is proving this meeting of the minds.
Meeting of the minds.
Yeah. It's not enough to just show, a few people did similar bad things around the same time. You have to prove they actually consciously agreed to work together on a plan, coordinate what they were doing to reach that shared illegal goal.
And the source material we have on Jedidiah Brown, it seems to offer some pretty, frankly, surprising evidence pointing right at that coordination requirement.
It really does. And a lot of it, allegedly, comes directly from JB himself. The documents detail him coordinating with people when they weren't live streaming, admitting to using out-of-context clips very strategically to build certain, damaging stories.
That sounds like deliberate coordination right there.
It points to intent, absolutely. And even more crucial, the sources cite him talking about a daily briefing.
A daily briefing?
Yeah. Think about that. A daily briefing isn't just a casual hangout. It implies, leadership, strategy, passing information around, planning. It basically sounds like the definition of that functional meeting of the minds you need for conspiracy.
That does sound pretty damning. But the documents mention something even more direct, don't they? An explicit admission.
They do, exactly. JB is cited allegedly admitting straight up to having a meeting of the minds with one of the main co-conspirators mentioned, Moneyboy Trey, or MB.
Wow. In
a civil conspiracy case, getting an admission like that where a defendant basically confirms the central legal point against them. That's huge for the plaintiff.
Yeah, I bet.
It means they don't have to rely just on piecing together circumstantial evidence of coordination. They can potentially point to direct evidence of the agreement itself.
Okay, so if the how is this alleged coordination, this meeting of the minds, the next question is why? What was the goal they supposedly agreed on? And the sources seem pretty clear. It wasn't just about, say, public advocacy. It points towards money.
And this is really where the whole narrative shifts,
Yeah.
From just a bitter online fight to what looks like a calculated scheme. The sources cite JB directly admitting, allegedly, that his whole reason for targeting the plaintiff, Hall, was, and I'm quoting the allegation here, to make money off me, Hall.
Really?
Yes, because he wants a percentage of the money Hall was apparently making from reporting on JB's alleged activity.
Okay, that sounds like an extortion attempt, basically.
It reframes the entire campaign, potentially, as this high-pressure tactic to get money. It completely changes the legal nature of all the actions involved.
Okay, but hang on. If the motive is money, you'd need proof that money actually changed hands, right?
Yeah.
Specifically linked to the conspiracy's actions. Is there documentation for that?
Yes, and this piece is really crucial for showing the conspiracy wasn't just talk, that there were actual overt acts. The source material documents JB sending it was a $50 Cash App payment to another co-conspirator, Cooking with Frank.
$50. That doesn't sound like much in the grand scheme of things.
It's not the amount, it's the alleged purpose that matters legally. The documentation apparently specifies this payment was made for Cooking with Frank making a defamatory video against the plaintiff.
Ah, okay, so the link is the key.
Exactly. The specifics are critical here. If the evidence shows that payment went to a named co-conspirator right after, or specifically tied to, them doing something defamatory that helped the overall financial goal, which is what's alleged, then it's not just some random friendly donation.
Gotcha.
Legally, it becomes potential proof of payment for an overt act of the conspiracy. That small transaction could be tangible, verifiable evidence that the agreement, that meeting of the minds, was actually being acted upon and, well, paid for.
Okay, that makes sense. Let's try to nail down the players here. Who else was allegedly involved in this coordination? We've heard Money Boy Trey, Cooking with Frank. The sources also name Val Queen and Sherry Hatcher Britton.
The list of alleged co-conspirators is quite long.
And there's this one potentially confusing point about someone named Avant. The sources clear that up.
Yes, they do. The source material is actually very helpful on this. It explicitly states that Mary Avant and Carolyn Avant are the same person.
Oh, okay. One person, two names.
Right. And JB apparently confirms a connection to Mary Avant when confronting someone online, and then the source material connects the dots. So it seems like one individual allegedly using two names, maybe to make the network seem bigger or, for operational reasons.
Interesting.
But clarifying that simplifies things for the legal side, mapping out who is allegedly doing what.
And central to actually doing these things, executing the alleged plan, seems to be this internal group, the Advocacy Cyber Investigations Unit, or Advocacy CIU. How do the sources link this unit directly back to Jedidiah Brown?
Right. The Advocacy CIU, it's confirmed, according to the sources, to work directly for JD. They're presented not just as random supporters, but as an actively recruited, named unit.
Like an operational team.
Exactly. The sources apparently include evidence showing this unit openly recruiting people to join the INA family, specifically for investigations. That confirms a structure, an operational team designed for gathering information and allegedly for carrying out harassment.
And the documented actions of this Advocacy CIU, they sound particularly nasty.
Yeah, the focus seems to be on humiliation based on the source material. There's evidence cited of posts from the unit mocking someone, showing like an EBT card being declined.
Wow.
Just a really deliberate, targeted act of public shaming. Pure malice. And beyond that, JB is explicitly documented telling his investigation team to investigate the plaintiff off the platform.
Okay, so taking it beyond just YouTube comments.
Right. It suggests the conspiracy's actions weren't just public talk, but moved into potentially private cyberstalking and harassment, which, directly supports claims like intentional infliction of emotional distress, invasion of privacy.
Okay, so we've got the alleged agreement, the coordination, the financial motive. Now, how did they supposedly carry this out? What were the unlawful means? This seems to bring us right to Jedidiah Brown's core operation, this Investigate and Advocate Organization, INA. The sources allege it's basically an illegal business.
Yeah, this looks like a major point of vulnerability for him. The core allegation is that INA is operating as an unlicensed private investigation business, specifically in Illinois, where JB is based, and Oklahoma, where the plaintiff is.
He calls himself an investigative advocating journalist, though. Does that label protect him?
Well, that's the crux of it. Calling yourself a journalist doesn't automatically shield you if your actions fall under regulated activities.
Yeah.
Operating a private investigation business is heavily regulated. Both Illinois and Oklahoma have laws requiring specific licenses, bonding, insurance, training.
Yep.
So if JB is, as the sources allege, recruiting people, this veteran team he talks about, to actively dig up information on opponents, gather private details from off the platform, basically conduct surveillance or digital digging, regardless of whether he ultimately posts the findings on YouTube, those activities themselves could legally be defined as running an unlicensed PI business.
And the recruitment part is key evidence.
Yes, the open recruitment documented for the INA family to join these specific investigations is strong evidence suggesting a systematic operation, allegedly violating state PI laws. If true, it means the very platform they built this alleged conspiracy on, INA, is fundamentally based on ongoing illegal activity.
And this allegedly illegal structure was then used to raise money, which leads to these fraud allegations about products he was selling.
Exactly. The sources show JB constantly asking for resources and donations to fund these so-called investigations. And the fraud claims really ramp up when you look at this alleged THC CBD business he was promoting on his stream.
Right, I remember seeing mentions of this. What did the sources say he showed?
They confirm he displayed THC spray, balm, pills, and then apparently trying to make the business sound super successful, maybe to boost sales or legitimacy. He claimed it made an incredible $93,000 in just 90 days.
$93,000. Wow. Okay, but here's where the sources seem to really pull the rug out from under that claim. What was the issue with the product label?
Yeah, this detail is striking. The source material is very specific. JB apparently trying to hide the label on the product during the stream, but when it was visible, it traced back not to some, legitimate cannabis company or CBD producer,
But to
white glove janitorial. A janitorial service.
a janitorial service. Seriously.
That's the allegation, and that's central to the fraud claim because it implies this product, marketed as some kind of high-value health item, might have come from a totally unrelated non-medical source, or the entire business setup was just fake.
That's bizarre.
And it gets worse. The sources cite JB admitting he might have to delete the video because he accidentally showed the company name, and then offering to ship the products to buyers without a label so they couldn't be traced back.
Okay, that sounds like consciousness of guilt right there, trying to cover his tracks.
It really demonstrates alleged knowledge and a deliberate intent to hide the product's true nature and origin. Pretty damning stuff if proven.
So that takes us from state-level business violations, potentially, into federal territory with platform abuse, specifically this alleged misuse of the DMCA.
Right. And this could bring the whole thing into federal court. The sources allege JB misused the copyright system, the Digital Millennium Copyright Act, or DMCA, specifically Section 512.
What does that section do?
It basically allows someone to sue if a copyright takedown notice is filed with what's called a knowing material misrepresentation, meaning you lied deliberately when you filed the takedown.
Okay, and what was the alleged lie or misrepresentation in the notice JB filed?
According to the sources, the notice he filed claimed someone was infringing on a trademarked INA logo.
Like, trademarked. But the DMCA is for copyright, isn't it?
Exactly. That's the fundamental, massive legal error alleged. The DMCA, the law he used to file the takedown, deals with copyright. It has nothing to do with trademark law, which protects logos and brand names. So, by filing a copyright notice based purely on a trademark claim, the notice itself is arguably invalid from the start, inherently misfiled.
But could he just argue he made a mistake? Confused the legal terms? Does that automatically mean it was malicious?
Not necessarily just from the error alone, although it's a pretty basic error, but the sources allegedly provide the intent. The documentation reportedly includes audio and video evidence where JB admitted the takedown was false.
He admitted it was false.
Allegedly, yes.
Yeah.
Admitted it was a deliberate act of retaliation and that he used it intentionally to censor his opposition.
Wow.
That admission is critical because it hits the nail on the head for that knowing material misrepresentation standard in Section 512. It suggests he wasn't just confused. He allegedly confessed the real purpose was censorship and revenge. That makes the potential federal claim look very strong.
Okay, and finally, as another tactic, the sources talk about coordinated lies, misinformation spread about the plaintiff's other separate legal battles.
Yes, this seems to be part of the alleged strategy to undermine the plaintiff's reputation and credibility. JB repeatedly and falsely claimed, according to the sources, that the plaintiff's lawsuit against YouTube had been dismissed.
Which wasn't true.
Easily proven false. The public court records at the time apparently showed the judge was just considering a motion to dismiss, which means the case was very much still active and ongoing. It hadn't been thrown out at all.
So just a straight-up lie, allegedly. And when confronted with the actual facts from the court docket, how did JB supposedly react?
Well, he apparently tried to deflect blame, but in a way that kind of points back to the conspiracy idea. He allegedly claimed something like, "I say what I'm told. That's what I was told in my briefing."
Back to the briefing again.
Exactly. It suggests this false claim about the case dismissal wasn't just a random mistake he made up on the spot. It was potentially a coordinated piece of misinformation, maybe decided on in that daily briefing, and then spread publicly by the conspirators specifically to harm the plaintiff. That makes the lie itself potentially part of the coordinated effort.
Okay, so we've covered the alleged illegal business foundation, the platform abuse. Now we need to address what seem like the most serious overt acts alleged, the physical threats, the harassment. This forms the basis for claims like intentional infliction of emotional distress, or IIE. Let's start with this really startling claim about interstate travel for a confrontation.
Yeah, this is where the alleged actions move from purely digital harassment into something much more tangible and, frankly, frightening: the threat of physical violence. The sources detailed JB admitting he traveled, flew from Chicago down to the plaintiff's city, Norman, Oklahoma.
All the way from Chicago to Oklahoma.
Yes, with his team, allegedly, to have a visit. And this was planned for Mother's Day, May 12th, 2024. He even supposedly showed a flight confirmation on his stream to prove he was really doing it.
That definitely sounds like a planned physical confrontation.
Yeah.
Did JB try to frame it differently? Like maybe he was just going to talk?
Well, he allegedly tried to frame it as a trip for mutual combat, like they had both agreed to fight.
Mutual combat.
Yeah, but his own words and the surrounding context provided in the source material seemed to completely blow that defense out of the water. For one, JB is cited explicitly stating that his personal brand of advocacy includes violence against people who disagree with him. He allegedly said, "If I think that your opinion disagrees from mine, I will kick your ass."
Okay, so that establishes a pattern of advocating violence.
Right, and then how did the plaintiff's actions completely undercut this mutual combat idea?
What did the plaintiff do?
The plaintiff apparently provided video evidence showing that on that specific day, Mother's Day, he was actually going to church with his wife.
Going to church. Not exactly squaring up for a fight.
Definitely not. It pretty definitively shows he wasn't looking for or preparing for any kind of physical fight. And here's the kicker. JB's own statements further incriminate him on this point. He allegedly admitted that he knew Hall was going to call the FBI if he actually showed up.
Wait, he knew Hall planned to call the FBI?
That's what the sources allege he admitted. Now think about it. Someone who plans to call the FBI on you is clearly not a willing participant in mutual combat.
Yeah, that makes no sense.
And JB even allegedly mocked the plaintiff for telling him to stop threatening him, which just underscores the intent wasn't mutual anything. It was arguably harassment and causing distress through the threat of showing up from out of state, possibly for violence. This really elevates the alleged actions way beyond typical online drama.
And the harassment didn't stop there. It also allegedly included serious privacy violations like doxing.
Absolutely. The doxing incidents are meticulously documented in the source material, it seems. JB and his team are cited posting the plaintiff's actual home address right there on the screen during a stream.
His home address.
Yes, and even a picture of his house, allegedly. And this behavior wasn't just aimed at the plaintiff. The sources also detail them doxing colleagues who supported the plaintiff, specifically revealing the full name of Lolita Hayes.
Was the doxing of Lolita Hayes just random, or did the sources connect it back to the main alleged scheme?
It was allegedly tied directly back to the financial pressure motive. The documentation reportedly states that Lolita was targeted and harassed after she refused to comply with this demand from the alleged team, a 48-hour notice they gave her, demanding she stop supporting the plaintiff's business ventures.
Wow, a 48-hour notice. That sounds like something out of a mob movie.
It certainly sounds like intense pressure, and it connects the harmful, invasive act of doxing directly back to the alleged overarching plan to financially hurt and isolate anyone connected to the plaintiff.
And the nature of some of the personal attacks described in the sources, they sound truly extreme, which, as you mentioned, is the legal standard for intentional infliction of emotional distress, IIED.
Yes, exactly. To win an IIED claim, the conduct has to be more than just insulting or offensive. It has to be legally considered extreme and outrageous, something that goes beyond all possible bounds of decency in a civilized society.
And the alleged conduct here seems to fit that description.
Based on the source descriptions, it certainly seems designed to hit that high bar. The sources allege JB asked for permission to have sex with Hall's wife.
Oh, my God.
And made alleged hate speech comments specifically targeting Hall's interracial marriage, just incredibly vile personal attacks aimed at causing maximum emotional pain. The sources also cite JB threatening to release someone's sex tape, another intimidation tactic.
Just appalling.
Yeah.
And when the plaintiff indicated he was seeking help, like calling the FBI, what was JB's documented reaction?
Well, the reaction cited in the source material really seems to cement the argument for malicious intent. When Hall allegedly told JB, "I'm calling the FBI," JB's response, documented in the sources, was simply to send laughing emojis.
Laughing emojis. In response to an FBI threat.
Yes. That act, especially when you view it alongside the alleged interstate travel threats, the doxing, the hate speech, It demonstrates what looks like a profound, reckless disregard for the plaintiff's safety, his fear, his emotional state, and that's exactly the kind of evidence that bolsters an IIED claim.
Okay, finally in this section, let's quickly cover the alleged defamation and the commercial harm angle, specifically using the plaintiff's image without permission.
Right. On the defamation side, many of the alleged statements seem to fall under what's called libel per se. These are statements considered so inherently damaging, like falsely accusing someone of a serious crime or having a loathsome disease, that the court presumes damages occurred. You don't necessarily have to prove specific financial loss.
And what were those alleged statements?
Calling Hall a felon, claiming he uses cocaine, making really crude and insulting comments about his anatomy as the supposed reason for his reporting. And it wasn't just Hall. They allegedly ran a defamation campaign against colleagues like Burgundy Blue, too, calling her a manipulator, saying she was playing the victim, apparently as part of this broader strategy to isolate the plaintiff.
And the commercial harm went beyond just words into actually using his image, violation of right of publicity.
Exactly. The right of publicity is your right to control the commercial use of your own name, likeness, image. The alleged conspiracy team took Hall's likeness and used it without permission for their own line of merchandise. Specifically, this V-Knots merchandise line.
V-Knots merchandise.
Yes. And crucially, the sources confirmed the team publicly stated this wasn't just a joke or parody. They called it a serious commercial venture.
They admitted it was serious business.
That's what the sources allege. And that self-declaration is really important legally. It strengthens the claim considerably because it shows they weren't just mocking him. They were allegedly using his image maliciously, without permission, specifically for a documented financial gain. Legal implications and vulnerability.
Okay, looking across this whole landscape of alleged misconduct, I mean, it's vast. Illegal business operations, platform abuse, physical threats, doxing, defamation. The sources consistently seem to point to one huge vulnerability for Jedidiah Brown: his own words and actions.
It's quite striking. His own documented statements and actions, as presented in these sources, appear to be his single greatest legal liability.
This the kidnappers again, man.
Man, stop saying that shit over the phone. Damn.
I can't say shit, can I?
They seem to preemptively dismantle almost any standard defense strategy a lawyer might try to use, like claiming it was all an accident or a misunderstanding, or that he didn't know what he was doing was wrong.
Because his admissions show knowledge and intent.
Precisely.
Is this camera on me?
Yes, it's on.
That's stupid. Use your common sense.
The alleged admissions seem to prove both that he knew what he was doing and that he intended the consequences, whether it was retaliation, censorship, or causing distress.
And what about his behavior with his own digital content, like deleting videos?
Yeah.
How does that play into his legal situation?
That's another complicating factor. The source material documents this pattern of JB deleting videos, often right after they become relevant in legal discussions or filings. Now, deleting something isn't automatic proof of guilt in itself.
But it looks bad.
It looks very bad. It can be presented to a court as potential spoliation. That's the legal term for destroying evidence. If a judge finds that evidence was likely destroyed intentionally, they can make what's called an adverse inference. They can basically instruct the jury to assume the destroyed content contained information unfavorable to the person who deleted it.
Okay, big bucks, stop.
Stop it, old Andy.
Ouch. That could severely hurt his defense.
Absolutely. It prejudices his entire case.
Now, beyond the self-incrimination aspect, the sources also seem to reveal a really interesting financial vulnerability. There's this narrative allegedly pushed by JB about fighting against millions, like he's some kind of underdog, but the reality on the ground seems very different.
Yeah, that financial contrast is pretty stark, according to the source material. He's cited claiming to be up against millions, trying to frame it as this David versus Goliath battle.
Right, the little guy fighting the system.
But then his actual documented fundraising streams consistently show him, well, basically begging for contributions.
There's 1,000 of you. I said close them doors. Ushers, close the doors. Close the doors. Close the doors.
And often, the sources note, only pulling in relatively small amounts, maybe in the range of $200 or $300 per stream for these big investigations.
So a huge gap between the claim scale of the fight and the actual resources coming in.
Exactly. That discrepancy really highlights how potentially under-resourced and maybe unsustainable his whole alleged mission is. Especially when you think about the kind of money needed to properly defend against complex civil conspiracy charges, potentially I-Group claims, it makes the entire operation look like it's funded purely by stirring up conflict and then asking for donations off the back of it.
Exactly.
And speaking of unusual finances, there's this one really strange transaction mentioned involving a police officer. What's the story there?
Yeah, this detail adds another layer of potential legal questions. The sources confirm JB raised about $1,000, supposedly for an officer Miles of the Dalton Police Department.
Okay, fundraising for an officer.
But here's the odd part. JB allegedly admitted he couldn't actually speak directly to the officer. Instead, he channeled the money through someone described as an alleged family member of the officer.
Why would he do that? Why not donate it directly or through an official channel?
That's the question. In some situations, funneling money to a police officer indirectly through a third party, especially if it's not clearly documented as a legitimate, approved charity donation, could raise serious red flags. It might be viewed as an attempt to improperly influence an officer, or even potentially launder funds, depending on the specifics and the jurisdiction. It just adds another complex and potentially problematic element to the whole picture of alleged misconduct.
Wow. So this entire deep dive, it really feels like we've been charting how this alleged coordinated team used basically every tool they could find, the internet, social media, the legal system itself with things like the DMCA, state commerce laws by allegedly running an unlicensed business, and just raw personal intimidation. All documented, often in their own words, according to these sources, apparently aimed at a clear financial goal.
That really is the chilling takeaway from the source material. The sheer volume and variety of the documented unlawful acts alleged, from the potential fraud with those janitorial service products to the unlicensed PI operation, the retaliatory DMCA takedowns, which is a federal issue, and then the really extreme harassment, including, unbelievably, flying across state lines, apparently seeking a physical confrontation.
And it's all tied together.
It's all allegedly linked by evidence pointing to coordination, that meeting of the minds, and driven by that financial motivation. The legal case described isn't built on speculation. It seems built on a massive record of alleged self-incrimination. And, the sources mentioning JB being arrested for violent conduct at a public board meeting just further establishes a potential pattern of physical aggression spilling out into the real world.
Well, thank you for guiding us through this incredibly detailed and frankly disturbing breakdown of the source material. It really makes clear that the potential legal exposure described here is, it's immense, it's severe.
It certainly highlights the huge difference between just having strong opinions online, maybe even being abrasive, and allegedly orchestrating a documented, multifaceted conspiracy with real-world consequences.
We've seen overwhelming evidence presented in these sources that these alleged actions were driven by a clear financial motive kept afloat by conflict and relatively small donations. But if Jedidiah Brown's entire operation, as described, really does run on documenting and exploiting conflict to get resources, it raises a really interesting question for you, the listener, to think about. What happens when the fuel runs out? If all the targets of this alleged harassment everywhere just decided to completely stop engaging, stop giving the operation the conflict it seems to need to monetize, does the whole engine just sputter and collapse under its own unsustainable financial model? Or does the alleged conspiracy just pack up and move on, looking for a new city, a new community, and maybe a new, more vulnerable target to fuel its existence? That's definitely something to chew on until our next deep dive.
No problem. Okay, so how do you say it again? Anderson.
Anderson.
I'm sorry, I keep asking because I just can't.
Anderson.
Okay, that's God's son. He said, "End of the sun." It's God's son.
Lord Jesus.
God's son. Just say God's son. I'm saying God. Okay.
I see you. Yeah, one moment.
You ain't gotta do no more Google Translate. I'm worn out with that phone.
You can't keep getting away with it!
This is Anderson. So, ah, right, Anderson. So that's what he wanted to sell to me was the Burberry hat. I think he got it off Canal.
It was at this moment that he knew. He fucked up.
Got you, bitch.
Hey, yo, lesson here, babe. You come at the king, you best not miss.
Big, 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 big man.
That's